In the heart of the Ozarks, nestled between jagged ridges and thick forests, lay a stretch of land the locals simply called Black Hollow. The place carried an aura that was older than memory. Even in daylight, it seemed darker than the rest of the woods. Its canopy swallowing the sun, its silence unsettling. Children were warned not to go near. If you hear your name whispered there, parents told their young, don't you dare answer back. They said a woman lived in the hollow, a witch with hair like nettles and eyes that glowed like coals. She could summon sickness with a breath, twist a man's luck with a glance, and steal a child's voice forever if they strayed too close. The stories were retold around campfires and in church pews, gaining weight with each retelling. Farmers blamed her for droughts, hunters for empty traps, mothers for stillborn babes. Whether the hollow truly held such a figure didn't matter. Fear made her real enough. And yet, as with all legends, there were always those who dared to question. 17-year-old Elijah Turner was one of them. Strong-backed and stubborn, he was the kind of boy who scoffed at shadows. To him, the Witch of Black Hollow was nothing but a tale used to keep children from wandering too far. People see a blackbird on the fence and call it her familiar, Elijah muttered one evening while mending a fence with his father. If a cow goes dry, they blame her. Ain't it easier than admitting you forgot to feed the poor beast? His father didn't answer, only spit into the dirt. But Elijah's younger sister, Mary, perched nearby with a basket of eggs, tilted her head. And what if you're wrong? She asked softly. Elijah smirked. Then let her come, curse me herself. But later that week, when their neighbor's baby grew feverish after straying near the creek, the whispers started again. The mother cried that she'd seen shadows moving in the hollow, shapes that weren't human. By Sunday, the preacher declared from the pulpit that the witch was restless again. Elijah wanted to laugh, but unease had already crept into his chest. By the summer of 1892, Maple Hollow was a town split in two. Some, mostly the older folks, swore the witch's power was real. They spoke of curses stretching back decades, misfortunes too many to be chance. Others, usually the young, dismissed it all as nonsense, though even they crossed themselves when they passed the hollow at night. The argument spilled into the general store, into the pews on Sunday mornings. One camp demanded fire and cleansing to drive out the evil. The other urged calm, saying it was nothing more than stories. Suspicion spread like wildfire, setting neighbor against neighbor. For Elijah, it was almost unbearable. He hated how the town jumped at every shadow, how quick they were to find a scapegoat. Yet even he couldn't deny the strange feeling that settled over him whenever he glanced toward the black line of trees. It was as though the hollow was waiting, watching. And fear, whether grounded or not, had already taken root. Mary Turner was only 14, but unlike her cautious brother, she was drawn to mystery rather than repelled by it. She would sit at dusk on the fence post that overlooked the valley, staring toward the dark ridge of Black Hollow. Her hair caught the fading sunlight, a faint halo against the gloom. If she's real, Mary whispered one evening, why would she hate us? Elijah frowned. Because people hate her first. That's how it works. But Mary's gaze stayed on the trees. She thought of the sick children, the whispered stories of potions and charms. Something inside her tugged, a quiet conviction that perhaps the woman wasn't evil at all. Elijah tried to shake her curiosity, but he saw the same thought stirring inside himself. What if the witch wasn't a monster? What if there was more to her story? The idea gnawed at him, though he dared not admit it aloud. One evening, while hauling wood to the church storeroom, Elijah stumbled across an old leather-bound book buried beneath hymnals and dust. Its pages were yellowed, its spine cracked. He opened it cautiously, expecting prayers or sermons. Instead, he found a name, Eleanor Crowe. The entries spoke of herbs gathered from the hills, children delivered safely into the world, fevers eased by poultices. She was no witch. She was a healer, a midwife, a teacher. Line after line told of kindnesses given freely until the entries darkened. Words grew bitter, wounded. Elijah read late into the night, heart pounding. The witch of Black Hollow had once been a woman of trust, woven into the fabric of their own community. So why had they turned on her? The journal's story unfolded like a tragedy. One winter, long before Elijah was born, a fever swept through the Ozarks. Eleanor tended the sick tirelessly, moving from cabin to cabin. But despite her efforts, many died. Children, fathers, mothers. Grief-stricken families needed someone to blame. Whispers began. Perhaps Eleanor had caused the illness with her potions. Perhaps her knowledge came from dark places. One by one, friends became accusers. The final straw came when the preacher's own child passed away. The people, maddened with sorrow, gathered torches. They burned her cabin to the ground and drove her into the forest. From that night, she was no longer Eleanor Crowe, but the Witch of Black Hollow. Elijah closed the book with trembling hands. The curse, he realized, hadn't started with her. It had started with them. On the last page, in shaky handwriting, was Eleanor's final entry. If they cast me out, let their fear feed itself. Let them see shadows where none exist. My curse is not on them, but within them. The curse of suspicion, the death of mercy. Elijah's breath caught. It wasn't a curse of spells or shadows. It was worse. It was the curse of human nature, fear twisting into hatred. The thought gnawed at him. Every suspicious glance, every whispered accusation in town was proof that her words had taken root. And now, decades later, they were still living under it. Perhaps Eleanor was long gone, but her curse lived on in their hearts. The following week, Elijah ventured near the woods to cut firewood. The day was crisp, the air still. He swung his axe against the log, sweat running down his brow. Then he heard it. Elijah. The voice drifted through the trees, soft and broken like wind through hollow bones. He froze. His name again, whispered, pleading. It wasn't Mary. It wasn't anyone he knew. His chest tightened, the journal's words burning in his mind. Do not let them forget me. The axe slipped from his hand. Fear surged through him and he fled, leaving the wood scattered on the ground. He didn't stop running until the hollow was far behind him. That night, he told no one, but he couldn't sleep. The whisper still lingered in his ears. Soon, others began to report strange happenings, shapes seen between the trees, names whispered in the night, livestock wandering off. Fear spread quickly until the townsfolk gathered in the church to decide what to do. The preacher stood at the pulpit, voice booming. We must drive this evil out once and for all. Burn what remains in the hollow. Cleanse the land. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Torches were already being imagined in their hands. But Mary, small and pale, stood from the back pew. Her voice trembled but carried. Maybe we made her this way? Maybe the curse isn't hers. It's ours. The room went still. People stared, some in shock, others in anger. But Elijah saw something else in their eyes, too. Doubt. Seeds of doubt, just as dangerous as fear. Before the town could act, tragedy struck again. Annie Jacobs, Mary's closest friend, fell gravely ill. The doctor shook his head, saying there was nothing to be done. Her mother clutched the child, sobbing, while the neighbors whispered, "The witch has claimed her." For Elijah, the words cut deep. He remembered Eleanor's journal, the herbs she had written about, the remedies she once carried. What if her knowledge still lingered in the hollow? That night, while the family wailed and the town prayed, Elijah and Mary made a silent vow. If the witch's curse was truly within them, then perhaps the only way to break it was to walk into the hollow themselves. And so, lanterns in hand, they stepped into the darkness. Elijah and Mary entered Black Hollow under a waning moon, lanterns casting trembling light on the twisted trees. The forest seemed alive, every branch groaning, every leaf whispering secrets. Their footsteps stirred dry leaves, each crack echoing like a warning. "Do you think she's really here?" Mary whispered, gripping Elijah's arm. "I don't know," he admitted. "But if there's even a chance she left something behind, something that can help Annie." They pressed on, deeper into the hollow. Shadows seemed to reach toward them, but neither faltered. Finally, they stumbled into a small clearing. At its center was a circle of stones, carefully arranged. Beneath the largest stone, jars of dried herbs were sealed with cracked wax. Mary bent down, tracing her finger along faded symbols etched into the jar. These are remedies, Elijah, not curses." A chill ran down his spine. The woman they had feared all their lives had not been a bringer of death, but a protector, leaving her knowledge behind for anyone brave or desperate enough to seek it. They packed the jars carefully. The forest seemed to sigh behind them, as if releasing a long-held breath. Yet even as they left the hollow, a sense of eyes watching lingered, heavy but not threatening. Back at Annie's home, Elijah and Mary carefully prepared the herbal remedies. Willow bark, wild mint, and a blend of unknown leaves were brewed into a steaming tea. The scent was sharp but soothing, carrying an earthy fragrance that seemed to fill the small cabin with hope. Annie's mother watched anxiously. "Do you really think this will work?" she asked, clutching her daughter's frail hand. Elijah hesitated, then nodded. "It's the only chance she has." The first spoonful was given slowly. Annie whimpered, weak and trembling, but soon the warmth of the tea seemed to calm her. By dawn, her fever had broken. The color returned to her cheeks, her small hands clasping her mother's in relief. Word of the miraculous recovery spread quickly. Some villagers were astonished, others terrified, their fear of the witch unyielding. But Elijah and Mary knew the truth. Eleanor's gift was never malevolent. It had been misunderstood, buried under a heap of superstition and grief. For the first time, the siblings felt a spark of hope that the hollow's dark reputation might finally begin to change. Annie's recovery sparked whispers across Maple Hollow. Families whose children had fallen ill years ago began recalling the remedies Eleanor had once shared. Elijah and Mary shared the knowledge they had gathered in the hollow, teaching the townsfolk how to prepare teas and poultices to ease fevers and soothe pain. Old fears did not vanish overnight. Some elders clung to the stories of curses and shadows, but slowly, gratitude began to replace suspicion. The town realized that the real power of Black Hollow wasn't in any witch, but in the knowledge that had been hidden, waiting for the right hands to act. Mary looked at Elijah one evening as the sun set behind the ridge. "Maybe the hollow isn't cursed," she said softly. "Maybe we were." Elijah nodded. "And maybe that's the lesson." That night, Elijah dreamed of Eleanor Crowe. Her hair was silver, cascading like moonlight over her shoulders, her eyes sorrowful yet kind. She spoke without sound, her voice resonating directly in his mind. "You see now," she said. "They branded me a witch because they feared what they could not understand. But fear is not my curse. It is yours and theirs. Promise me you will not let mercy die in your hearts, as theirs did in mine." Elijah woke with a start. The lantern flickered beside him, shadows stretching across the walls. He couldn't tell if the dream had been real or a message carried through the years. But the sense of urgency was undeniable. Eleanor's plea lingered in his chest, like a living heartbeat. He whispered to Mary, "We have to change this story. For the town, for her, for everyone." Despite Annie's recovery, fear flared once more. A group of men gathered with torches, claiming the witch had lured children into the hollow. Anger twisted their faces as they marched through the village toward the clearing, ready to burn what they still imagined as evil. Elijah and Mary raced ahead, hearts pounding. They knew Eleanor's knowledge could save lives, but not if the townsfolk destroyed everything in their rage. The forest seemed to close in around them, dark and threatening. They reached the clearing just as the mob arrived, torches raised high, shouting accusations. The smell of smoke was thick in the air, mingled with panic and fear. Elijah raised his arms, trying to halt them. "Stop!" he shouted. "You're wrong!" She was never evil. Mary stepped forward, holding Annie in her arms. "Look at her," she cried. "Alive! Healthy! Saved by the woman you called a witch." The men faltered, confusion crossing their faces, memories of past illnesses, of remedies that once helped their families, surfaced. Slowly, torches were lowered. The fire in their eyes dimmed as guilt began to burn in its place. An old man wept quietly, realizing too late that fear and anger had blinded him to Eleanor's compassion. The mob, once a force of destruction, disbanded silently, leaving the hollow eerily quiet. The siblings knew the hollow had changed that night, not through magic, but through courage and truth. Maple Hollow slowly shifted. Stories of curses gave way to stories of healing. Villagers learned the herbs and methods Eleanor had left behind. Respect replaced superstition. Understanding replaced fear. Elijah and Mary became healers in their own right, teaching the next generation how to use nature's gifts to save lives. And though some still whispered about shadows and strange voices, the majority now spoke of mercy, remembrance, and lessons learned from mistakes long past. The true magic, they realized, had always been in kindness, courage, and the willingness to see beyond fear. Years passed. The legend of the witch transformed. Children no longer feared Black Hollow. Instead, they were taught its history as a lesson in compassion. The curse was no longer supernatural, but a warning. Hatred, suspicion, and cruelty can destroy communities far faster than any illness or spell. The hollow became a place of memory, a reminder that fear must be tempered with understanding. Eleanor Crowe's story, once twisted into a tale of horror, now served as a moral compass for the town. Elijah and Mary often returned, leaving flowers at the stone marking the edge of the clearing, whispering thanks for a woman who had taught them, and the town, what true courage and mercy meant. Decades later, the Turners had families of their own. The town had grown, but the story of Eleanor Crowe endured. People still walked near the hollow at dusk, but not in fear. Instead, they paused to reflect, remembering a healer wronged by those who could not see her heart. A small stone marker at the edge of Black Hollow read, "Eleanor Crowe, midwife, teacher, healer, wronged but not forgotten." Every child learned her story, every adult respected her sacrifice, and every visitor understood. The witch's curse had never been in her. It had always been within those who feared her. On quiet nights, some travelers claim they hear a soft voice in the hollow, whispering through the trees, "Remember mercy." Whether it is Eleanor herself or the echo of conscience, it serves as a timeless reminder. The greatest curse is not the one cast by witches, but the one born from fear, cruelty, and the failure to show compassion. The people of Maple Hollow learned to live differently, aware, gentle, and mindful. And in doing so, the hollow lost its darkness, replaced by the light of understanding. Even now, in 1892 and beyond, Eleanor's curse lives, not in shadow, not in sickness, but in the memory of hearts awakened to mercy.